So the person wants to, what role does the person is saying that what role does foreign aid play in entrenching poor governance in African countries like Angola, Zimbabwe, where political leaders often benefit at the expense of their citizens. So they have inculcated the aspect of becoming inability to become self-sufficient, but also putting up weak leaders to rule those countries. So how can you to better explain this to our people? The person has cited the example of like Angola and Zimbabwe.
Yeah, I would say previously, I would take a different approach here. Previously, Angola may have fallen, and even Zimbabwe. Those are not really the best example in this situation, just because for a very long time, we've had individuals like Mugabe, who was in Zimbabwe and could not have allowed something like that to happen in his country. That is why they gave him one of the highest thousands of sanctions against his country that led to his currency going. So we know all of that story. So I might disagree with that example, but I understand the question. I respect that. The question is a very good question, and it's very it ties a lot to a lot of other countries that are in Africa. So we know. I mean, even with Angola too. Angola has not really been in that situation. Angola has been. So what they did was they funded two factions in Angola. They ended up fighting wars long term. But Angola now has been doing, in the last 10 years, has actually been the entire city of Kuala, the capital. I forget the name now. Has done a lot of the buildings that are there, skyscrapers, are all built by the Chinese. But nevertheless, to get to address that question, we first of all have to understand what the hegemon or the empire has been trying to accomplish.
Exactly.
There are so many resources that are many of these countries in Africa are endowed by lots of resources. These resources cannot all be used all at once. Actually, let's take a step or two back and look at the empire's economy. The way that the economy has functioned, you have a few individuals, maybe like 400 families, that have over maybe $18 trillion in assets under control. They control more than 400 individuals, especially in the United States, control more than 50% of the resources of the entire country. So in that kind of setup, these individuals, in Russia, they keep calling them oligarchs. These oligarchs in the United States, they have political control. They provide the funding for political campaigns, and when these politicians win, they go on to support the agenda. So now, if we come back to, I bring that because it's essential to understand why these things are the way they are.
Exactly.
So when these individuals, then these are people that are in the oil companies, they are in media, they are in all these really big corporations. So the resources of Africa, for example, is really huge. So they can't just use up all of that resources. So basically, they look for a way to preserve that resources long-term, 10 years, 20, 30 years from now. But the African people cannot sit on their and fold their arms and not do anything. Right now, Africa has a population of about 1.3 billion, and the average age of a population is somewhere around 25 years old. So these individuals are looking for something to do. They can't really stay like that. So what the hegemon has done is in all these countries, is to put a stooge, position individuals there that they call the elites. Yeah. These elites directly report to them, and the job of these elites is to try to maintain control of those resources on behalf of long-term, on behalf of these individuals that are setting the agenda within the hegemon. So that is generally the structure. So if you understand that it is not necessarily about poor governance, if you say poor governance, you can technically be blaming yourself for falling into the trap of being that stooge that has been picked up by the hegemon to protect their interest against the interest of the people. So a lot of these governors, a lot of these presidents of these countries, they can really do a good job. Sometimes it doesn't really require an innate managerial ability, aptitude to do the work of running the country. But because they have no control, they have no powers, the agenda is set by someone else, and they have to just implement that agenda. Then they tend now to look like really poor managers. It's just because they are subjecting themselves. Look at just how much improvement the countries of the Sahel, the AES, have done just in 2 years. They went from being unable to even fund the construction of a road, because a lot of the money that was coming in was being used to pay the presence of foreign troops in their country, while these foreign troops were taking their resources at the same, not the troops by themselves, but the troops provided cover for their resources to be extracted at the same time. So by taking over the control of their country, taking over their resources, they have just been able, within this 1 or 2 years, been able to make significant progress in implementing or improving the welfare of their people, without going into details and examples of what has improved. So I'm hoping that I'm addressing this individual's question.
Concern, right? Okay.
So it's also good to really quickly to learn, comrade, really quickly.
Yeah.
It's also good to answer the question. So where do we go from now, or what do we do about situations like that?
Exactly.
So it's essential to do that. But I'll give it go ahead before hopefully we can address
exactly.